Well, hey, book lovers, welcome back to another of our live book readings. I am so excited to see you today. We're going to be reading from my steampunk Aladdin retelling Lions and Lamps. This is such a fun one. We have such a big twist on the original Aladdin story. We get to meet characters that some of the more recent versions may have left out or changed. We get to meet a really cool genie who has a secret. He is like the most lovable, wonderful, amazing character. You can see him right here on screen. He's just like this big teddy bear, but whoo, does the genie have a secret? And we're going to be meeting our Aladdin today. So this is a dual point of view steampunk retelling, and we're going to read the first chapter, which is from Aladdin's point of view. The second chapter is from Cyra, who is my princess, and you're not going to see her today, but she is one of my favorites. I'm excited for this one. So let me real quick read the blurb to you, and then we're going to dive in, and we're going to read the first chapter, and I got things to tell you. I'm excited for this one. So here we go. All wishes require sacrifice. Are you willing to pay the price? Cyra spent the last 7 years being trained to steal an airship in a brutal competition that leaves the victors with millions. Last year, she won. Aladdin spent the past year fighting to get enough money to take his mother away from Horallen after his father was murdered. Now his evil Uncle Kacper wants to force him into the competition and straight to his death inside the collection cave. When Aladdin discovers a genie said to have been banished a century ago, the competition becomes even deadlier, and he knows he can't trust the girl who snuck into the competition this year. But Cyra might not survive his ruthlessness either in a game where only the lion's heart can win. All wishes require sacrifice, and someone is going to pay the price for this store bridge. So, today we're going to be reading this really cool take on it. This is steampunk. They are after an airship, which is amazing. And I actually have some fun facts for you. So my hometown was the site of the first steam locomotive in the United States. We had the first train, y'all. I have seen all the cool things. And so this is not historical fiction. It does not have historical stuff in it, but I did take some of the important names and some of the important people, and I kind of referred to them in here. So I gave them little shout outs inside of the story to my hometown and some really cool stuff that happened there, which I'm very, very excited about. And we get this really cool twist on Aladdin and Cyra, which is very much enemies to lovers. They do not like each other. They do not get along at first. They are forced to work together, and maybe things happen and maybe things don't. I don't know. So we are going to jump in. We're going to read this one. This is going to be a lot of fun. I had so much fun writing all the steampunk, and the fashion in this is to die for. Like just look. That's just one of her outfits. It may not even be my favorite of her outfits. I love it. I love it. Do they race the airships? No. So they've actually got a single airship. It's a competition, and they have it hidden somewhere in the country. It is hidden. They have to go on this competition. So it's very Hunger Games like, where they have a whole bunch of people involved in this competition, and they are sent from this location to this location to find these different clues, and they have to get there, and whoever gets it and steals it gets to keep it and all the money. So it's very interesting. And fun fact here, Aladdin did not participate last year. He was dealing with his father's murder last year. Cyra did. She won. Cyra was actually adopted by the governor. Cyra was an orphan, and she was brought in as a child because he had advanced knowledge of this upcoming competition that no one else knew about, and he trained her from a very young age, took her off the streets and trained her to be cutthroat and to get this airship, and she did. And this year she's not allowed to participate because she won last year for the same person. So Cyra sneaks in because Cyra has a plan. She's going to get that airship to provide a home for the other orphans who are still living on the streets, while Aladdin's goal is to get the money. He's going to steal it for his uncle and take the money that he's going to be offered for this and get his mother out of the country and away from his evil uncle. But his uncle has some plans. He may be trying to get rid of Aladdin. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to read this. I'm going to use my blue light blocking glasses because I do not want to burn my eyes out. I am known to do that when I'm reading online. So I'm going to go ahead and use those so that I don't hurt myself. And we're going to pull this up. And we're going to take a look, as we jump pages already. We do have special chapter headers for each of these. This is dual point of view. So chapter 1 is Aladdin, chapter 2 is Cyra. And if you look carefully at the chapter headers as you're reading, you're going to notice something specific about each of them that is connected to their story and important to their story. And you'll see it when you get to that point. So here we go. We're going to jump in, and we are going to read the first chapter of Lions and Lamps. You are not going to the market like that. Mother's words are sharp, but then they always are. Would you prefer I walk out of here with nothing on, Mother? I challenge. I wouldn't be above leaving most of my order behind to prove a point. Aladdin, you will do no such thing. I know. I cut her off, slicing a hand through the air to silence her. You say the same thing every time. It's time you get some new material, Mother. If your father were here, he's not. At my words, she reels back like I slapped her. I instantly regret it, but never one to back down. I push forward. And I have to go make sure we get paid, so if you'll excuse me. The door creaks as I open it. The market is far enough away that if I don't get out now, I won't make it on time, likely rendering me without a job for the day. White smoke drifts up to the sky that's actually blue for a change. It's been raining so hard for the past 2 weeks, I don't remember what a nice day looks like. People fill the streets clad in gears and leather. Chains sound behind me as a man stomps up to me, nearly catching the back of my heels. Watch it, he grumbles, pushing past me as I turn to confront him. Not everyone would find me so easily dismissed. I can be imposing when I want, but the man is massive. One leg is made entirely of metal right down to the peg. Chains sway on his other hip and on his vest, creating the noise I should have noticed before darting into the street. I don't have time to pick a fight this morning, so I let it go. Y'all, sorry, cold readings, fun times. If I had been earlier, though, I likely would have shown up for work with a black eye and a good story. Instead, I ducked down an alleyway and rushed by a group of children on their way to classes. Brass and copper tones fill the streets, lining every stone barrier, acting as railings, even creating walls along the edges of the buildings. I glance up as something shifts above me. A series of intricate and a series of intricate metal circles nested inside of each other, spinning with the wind off a balcony. Even in the slums, people like to be decorative. The sun glints off the metal, blinding me every few steps as decorations move and catch the light. Lamps hang from the shop entrances, still glowing despite the rising sun. A few banners wave in the breeze the crowd is creating, announcing the type of shop it hangs outside of. The air is still aside from the rush of wind we're causing as we hurry. In the distance, the train sounds, and I wish it was close enough that I could catch it. The trains don't run to the rookeries, though. Life was far simpler last year when I could spend all day on the rails if I liked. As soon as I reach the entrance of the alley, I hustle around the school children, grumbling under my breath. I certainly never minded leaving school earlier than most of the others did, even in this part of town. I'm getting so many notifications right now. It is throwing me something fierce. I learned more out on the streets than I did anywhere else. Steam shoots out from a side vent, burning my legs as I walk by a building. Clenching my fist at my side, I push forward, not a battle I want or can get involved in. The closer I get to the marketplace, the louder the roar of rushing water becomes. 3 large waterfalls pour into the stream that surrounds the market. Not too far away, smoke from the exhaust of the steam-powered city drifts into the air. Stepping onto the bridge, I begin to run. I can't be late. I refuse. I won't go groveling to Kacper again. There's a bit of space between the dark, metallic tones of the city and the bright, airy colors of the market and the halls. To the left is a second bridge, this one much smaller, that leads to a staircase. The steps going up lead to the main hall where the officials hold their meetings and run Horallen. The lower levels descend to the walkway beneath it, keeping our esteemed government from having to see the peasants unless they're making an announcement. Merchants mill on the garden island on the middle level between the 2 platforms, selling their foods and wares to the officials and workers alike. I bypass it and take the straight path, ducking down to the lower level beneath the garden island. Tables are cranked up all around me, resting above small boxes men and women use to carry their portable trade tables in. At the end of the day, all they have to do is crank the table back down into the box and carry it home, assuming they have something to transport their goods in as well. A few of the merchants who have made out better than the rest have tables that do the work for them, powered by steam or coal that carry their goods for them when they leave each night. Given the chance, I could probably create my own version of it, but I need access to metal first. Horallen has a tendency to keep men like me away from materials outside of our day-to-day jobs. A crowd already waits at the far end of the market, looking for work as Horallen's upper class slowly fills in to find workers for the day. Minimum pay isn't good enough to survive on, but if you can't get that, you go hungry. Loud stomping sounds next to me, mixed with the rattles of chains. I know who it is before I turn. Step back, boy. The man from earlier bellows in my ear. I can't get into a fight. I can't get into a fight. He puts his hand on my shoulders, wrenching me back so he can move closer to the front of the line. I'm getting in a fight. You're a fool, Aladdin. Kacper's words are crisp and full of condemnation. You have one simple job. I hold my finger to my tongue as Kacper applies a bandage to my temple, staunching the flow of blood. At least I avoided a black eye this time. I'm sorry, Uncle. I bow my head out of respect for my late father, not my uncle. Weren't you just in a fight last week? Kacper's obvious disdain for me fills the room. Books pile around us, littering the floors, tables, chairs. Every inch of the room is covered with them. For someone who likes to study so much, I think he'd keep them in better order. Instead, some are on their sides, others left open, and still some are perched precariously on top of each other, sliding open inch by inch until they collapse, bending the pages. I'm sure he's kept record of my transgressions somewhere in all this mess. Most of these are histories of Horallen, though many are on... Wow, sorry guys. Most of these are histories of Horallen, though many are on the boring technical developments of our ancestors. His fascination with the past and how it affects our future isn't uncommon for the citizens of Horallen, but most don't hoard knowledge like my father's younger brother does. You're lucky Byron found you when he did. Kacper flicks his wrist at his bodyguard. More machine than man. Byron nods from the corner, metal arm hissing with the movement as it adapts to its new position. While I can't know for sure, I'd guess his head and chest are probably the only things still human about him. Well, don't you sit there, boy. Thank him. Kacper's angry words jolt me out of my thoughts. Thank you, Byron, I say automatically. Come now, how are you going to explain this to your mother? Kacper asks as I slide off the table. He removes his pilot's hat and sets it down on the round side table so that the black brim is pointing at me as if accusing me of messing up again. The metal in the front gleams in the muted light coming through the exceptionally tall windows. Kacper glares at me, wrapped in the long dress coat that he wears over his shoulders. The brocade fabric of his suit jacket peeks out from behind it, open enough to show his vest and tie. Y'all, this is a lot easier when you record audiobooks. I'm just saying. The thin mustache on his upper lip twitches as he waits for me to answer. Well, my uncle shakes his head. I still haven't figured out how he could possibly be related to my father. I didn't start the fight. I confront him. You think that matters? He cuts me off, angling across the room straight at me. He miraculously doesn't trip on any of the books crowding the floor. If the other officials could see this mess, they'd likely kick him out of his position in the hall. Byron steps forward, ready to back his master should his scrappy little nephew decide to take a swing at him. I focus on Byron's long, blonde hair pulled back into a half ponytail behind him. His metal appendages could put a serious dent in a person. The man who attempted to hit me only gets a few swings in before Byron backhanded him across the market. Kacper's hand goes up once Byron is close enough to make me worry. He backs down, holding his position. The man, or machine, watches Kacper closely. I'm coming with you to explain this to your mother before returning to the hall, he announces. Fetch my hat. I hate it when he treats me like his lapdog. Fetch this and fetch that. Slipping to the side, I maneuver around him and his history collection and quickly move toward the table where he just set his cap. He mumbles to Byron, but I ignore him. I will get my mother and myself away from this man if it kills me. The walk is painfully long with Kacper and Byron by my side. I look like a dull copper next to them, the way that they shine. The merchants on the side streets and corners glance over us before deciding if it's safe to approach an official while he's escorting a delinquent through the city. Most decide it's worth the risk and run to Kacper's side to try to pawn off their wares on him. He ignores all but the food. He delights in ordering for himself and Byron and then waving it next to me until my empty stomach growls loud enough to produce a smirk on my uncle's face, which he tries in vain to hide. I've never understood the change in my uncle. I've never been very close to him, but he was friendly enough when my father was alive. Now that he's gone, any compassion the man seems to have been buried with his older brother the day that my mother and I said goodbye. Kacper cringes as soon as we cross over to my side of Horallen. My mother was a proud woman and refused to move into Kacper's care once we had to give up our house under my father's name. My mother still owned property in the area from before she married my father 20 years ago. He had died suddenly, and they didn't have time to transfer it to her name before his heart stopped beating, so it was taken from us a mere week after his death. She packed up her 18-year-old son and moved us to this neighborhood covered in shattered rugs hanging on ropes from one window to the next, lifeless lanterns swinging beside them close enough to cause a fire if people weren't careful. Debris filled the streets, but no one had time to clean it up. Our lives consist of waking, working, and occasionally sleeping. The smell of dust fills the air. I find it charming, perhaps even comforting, unlike the smell of my uncle's mansion. He, however, finds it as repulsive as having me for a nephew. "Emmeline!" Kacper calls out the moment I open the door. I cringe accidentally as he yells in my ear. Byron squeaks behind me. Perhaps Kacper should oil that gear. After a moment of shuffling, Mother appears. Her eyes grow wide when she sees my uncle in the house, then quickly narrows at me when she realizes it's my fault. "What did you do?" "Stripped, Mother. Isn't that what we were talking about before we left?" I rolled my eyes, unable to help it. "He was fighting again," Kacper answers for me. Maybe come in?" Mother motions for the men to join us, leading them to the kitchen. I won't be able to explain myself while Kacper is there, nor will I be able to talk myself out of whatever lies Kacper is going to spin this time. So instead of watching the airship collision while it happens, I veer off, taking the stairs to my room. Once inside, I close the door and go straight to the window. Prying it open, I come away with crumbling pieces of dried, flaking paint on my hands. I brush them off on my pants, removing the clip of bullet casings from around my shoulders and drop them onto the small cot I call a bed. The morning air feels cool against my skin now that I'm not rushing to get to the marketplace for work. Kacper will give Mother money once again, so I'm off the hook for the day's wages. I duck outside, pulling my legs out. Yeah, no, that was right. I had that right. I duck out, pulling my legs out behind me to sit on the fire escape. The metal rattles as I settle on it, but even as it sways, I feel safer here than anywhere else in the city. Mother might not like this part of town, and admittedly, I'm not a fan of the rats, but I feel like home here, even without my father. He always said he liked visiting the house where he was courting my mother. Below, the streets are quiet. Papers and junk rattle when the wind sweeps through. The buildings create a wind tunnel, and sometimes I wonder if we should be trying to harness the wind's power instead of always relying on steam and coal. The windows must be open below because I can hear Kacper's annoying voice drift up to me. Byron, in all of the years that I've known him, has maybe only said 24 things to me, or anyone other than Kacper, leaving Kacper to talk to my mother to death without his input. Unable to stand it, I leap up and swing over the railing to the fire escape, landing on the floor below, halfway between the first and second story of my home. This time, I take the steps, not wanting to elicit attention from my relatives inside. On the ground, I start to walk. It doesn't matter which direction as long as it's away from that snake of an uncle. He's been trying to flirt with my mother since a month after the funeral. I'm surprised he had the decency to wait that long out of respect. I don't think my mother is falling for it, but eventually I can see it happening. I have to get her out of here before she decides it's a good idea to elevate us back up in society. I find myself once again on the same route toward the market, dashing through the streets quick enough to escape, but not to cause anyone to look at me with more than a passing glance and an eye roll. I know better than to do anything that someone might remember me by. I tug at one of my fingerless gloves, adjusting it so that it sits more comfortably on my wrist as I move down the streets of Horallen. The chains for my silver pocket watch swing slightly from my chest to my pocket, tapping softly against my black vest. Reaching up, I push the white dress sleeves up higher on my upper arm, but it's tight enough against my muscles that I can only push it up so far. The town seems settled now. Everyone is at work or taking classes. The upper echelons are busy with their governmental work or researching our histories for any indication of what we should do next, while the lowlifes are rummaging the streets to steal what they need to survive. I've had to do it a few times too. Steal. I always watch my targets, though, ensuring I'm never taking from anyone who needs it as badly as I do. I go after people like my uncle, who have an abundance of wealth but are unwilling to share. Well, except with my mother, that is. My stomach growls again. I'm sure by now Kacper has given part of the food he collected on our trip to Mother, leaving me on my own to bring my arm gear with me. It would have been a lot easier to steal something to eat. Having left my entire... Oh, sorry, I just saw my screen go dark. I was checking on that one. Ooh. I hope we're still recording properly. Apologies if we're not. Having left it in my tiny room, I have to resort to doing the work myself. A few streets down, I find a line of vendors with cog-supported tables waiting near the bridge to the market, hoping to sell to the officials on their lunch breaks in an hour. They yell to women walking by on their way to visit friends, hoping to convince them to take a hostess gift with them. The women sashay away in their long dresses and bustles, parasols on their shoulders. A few stop, usually those who married into an upper tier recently who haven't learned to ignore the siren call of the merchants. I wait, knowing the classes release earlier than the hall does for break, or rather the advanced schools. They give the officials' children more time to wander and explore than they do kids from my side of town. Their breaks last only a few minutes, prohibiting them from wandering where they might be seen. Of course, there is nothing they can do about the orphans who don't bother to go to classes at all. They run wild in the streets. I bend, brushing the dirt off my cargo pants. Running my fingers through my hair to tame my locks enough to look presentable, I stride purposefully toward the vendors. Confidence is key to successful self-preservation. I turn my nose up at the first two vendors, even though the smells make my mouth water. I pause at the third, examining the bread before I turn and stride away. If I act like a snob, they'll assume I'm above my stature. My clothing suggests otherwise, but my attitude is everything. If I carry myself with head held high and shoulders back, I'll at least be able to get close enough to swipe something and run off before they can catch me. They're all middle-aged men anyway. They can chase me all they like and still slow before I do. Pursing my lips, I set my sights on a table at the far end and stride toward it, bypassing the others. The merchant is talking to a group of boys a few years younger than me, waving a sandwich in the air as he speaks animatedly. Can you believe it, the merchant sings, and here I thought they wouldn't bring that back this year after all that happened last year. His words pique my interest, but my mission comes first. Just because some girl won it, that's enough, numbskull, a second boy cuts off his friend. Don't talk about her like that. Like what? The first boy challenges as I sidle up next to the table covered in food. If I play my hand right, I can pocket at least one of the half sandwiches before the merchant realizes it's gone and hopefully steal another one or two. I've got the pockets for it. I lean my elbow against the table, pretending to be interested in the conversation. The boys ignore me, but the merchant glances at me, accepting me as part of the group. If he'd like to assume I'm one of the boys, who am I to correct him? They're not going to ban girls from the competition, idiot, the second boy redirects, obviously not wanting to comment on his respect for whoever the particular girl is. They can't let her be involved again, can they? A third asks. Now, boys, the merchant interrupts. The governor will decide what he wants, but I'm sure he's not going to let his daughter play again. She'll be a showpiece for this year's event. Someone has to crown the winner, after all. He'll trot her out like the little girl she is, the first boy sneers. You'll appreciate that, won't you, dummy? For children of the officials, these kids sure are bad with insults. She's older than we are, moron. Besides, it's the proprietor running the event, not the governor. He wouldn't have any say in how this works. The boys rib each other as they tease the one with the crush. The merchant eyes them warily, leaning over to pick up a sandwich to get them back on track. He waves it in front of them, and he turns his attention to the argument. And as he turns his attention to the argument, I pocket the closest meal. Another group of teens wander over. I suppose it's true that people assume a place with a crowd is the place to be. Had these boys wandered to the vendor I had just left, the others likely would have gone there without hesitation. I doubt they would have even glanced at the others. The leader picks the lucky merchant, and the others follow. Dressed in everything from cargo pants and vests to dresses with bustles and corsets, the students crowd into the row of vendors. Some of the wiser girls are intelligent enough to not follow the crowd and spread out to tables without lines. A girl with goggles pushes through the crowd, fighting for first dibs on a sandwich. I snatch another, quickly passing it to the hand that's not leaning on the table, and I stuff it into the pocket on the opposite leg. Third time's a charm for some. It's a trap for me. The merchant glares and lunges forward. So there we have the first chapter. In the second chapter, we are actually going to meet Cyra. We're going to see who she is. We're going to talk about how she came to live with the governor when he took her in, how he trained her to actually steal the airship last year, just how much money the girl made from the last theft, and what she can and can't do this year, as she may or may not be allowed to rejoin the competition to steal a brand new airship. So last year she won the Empress. Her governor, her adopted father, now owns this airship. And this year, there's a brand new and improved airship, the Stourbridge, that they are responsible for stealing. And Cyra, I'm just going to tell you right now, girlfriend is going to sneak out of her current airship and sneak into the competition, where she is going to run into Aladdin. Of course, Aladdin's going to meet the genie, who has secrets of his own. And all these things are going to clash and collide. And it's just going to be a steampunk disaster. It's lots of fun. It is a very fun story. It's a very fun series. There's a lot that goes into it, and I can't wait for you guys to read more on Lions and Lamps. You can, of course, check out more on Lions and Lamps by going to lionsandlampsinfo.camrobinsonbooks.com. If you've got questions, feel free to drop those now. We'll hang out for just a minute and chat. I'm glad that you are enjoying the imagery, and I'm glad that you were also immersed in this. It was a lot of fun. It's a very fun world for me to have built. And we are going to see throughout the course of the first story, Lions and Lamps, in this series, the Stealing Steam series, we are going to see both the higher ups, the fancy side of the steampunk life, and the lower sides of it as well. We do have some interesting friends that are going to come into play who we're not quite sure if we can trust them or not. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. Maybe we've got a little drama going on for a certain someone's affections. Maybe we don't. I will say, and this is one of my favorite things about this story. There is a charming older woman we are going to meet later on. I'm not going to tell you anything about her. Not going to tell you her name. But I will say that this charming older woman has a clock in the back of her head, like right at the base of her skull and neck. It is for a very specific reason. It's built right into her body. And she seems like this lovely, charming older woman, like the perfect grandma type thing. But she has a sword hidden in her cane, and she knows how to use it. And she knows how to use her deceased husband's position to get what she wants. And she may or may not be helping one side or the other in this competition. She may side with Cyra. She may side with Aladdin. She may have some tricks up her sleeve of her own. You are going to like her. She is amazing. So we've got a lot of really cool characters, a lot of really cool imagery. We've got the steampunk vibes. We've got the amazing fashion, and the world in this one is a fun one to have created. So I appreciate all of you being here with me. We are going to be doing more live readings every single Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern here on YouTube and on Facebook. We're going through the first chapters of all of my books. We're getting up there now. We have over 24 published. I have over 24 published books. We're reading the first chapters, the first books in the series. And when we get done with those, we're going to be reading some of the first chapters from my friends' novels as well. So if you've got an opinion on which one we should read next week, please go ahead and let me know. I would love to hear from you on what story you would like to hear from next, whether it be any of the fun things you see behind me going on. You can go ahead and look through like my Amazon page or whatever and shout out which one you would like to see next. We have done quite a few of them already, so you can check our YouTube page and Facebook page for more to get those first chapters of those stories as well. And of course, I've got a handful of free books out right now that you can be checking out on all the major buying platforms as well. I will see you guys again next week as we jump into another live reading. And I hope that you enjoyed our live reading of Lions and Lamps this week, and pick up a copy to see what happens next and to meet Cyra, because for as much as I love Aladdin, and I do love my Aladdin, I adore Cyra. So good luck. I hope your heart is prepared for this story. It is a fast-paced, fun, gripping story, and I will see you next week as we dive into another live book reading. Until then, I hope you all have a great day and stay inspired. Bye, friends.